All right, students, welcome to the Star Tutors Hype Time live stream. If you guys haven't been with us for this video before, we are excited to have you first and foremost. I am Chase. I will be conducting the live stream today and trying to get you guys fired up for the test tomorrow, which I know is difficult to do in itself, but hopefully we come away today with some positive momentum, some positive encouragement, just some being ready for the test tomorrow. I mean, that is so much of this battle, and you guys will see that. I'll try to talk you through that tonight. But so much of this battle is just being in the right mindset. We talked about it a little bit last night for those that had a chance to watch the comprehensive review. This idea, this mentality of how am I going to keep pushing through even when I don't really want to be pushing through, right? Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? Guys, as you guys get into the chat tonight, today, this afternoon, whatever, will you guys give me a thumbs up or just say hello so we know who's here, and then we will get going here with the actual content and what we're trying to get done with this. Is that cool? Just say hello. Just give us a thumbs up. Awesome, guys. Yeah, so as we get going into this today, we're trying to focus on today and tonight is not the content, right? That stuff was that's what we were working on for the last 6 months or whatever, the last however long you guys have been working on this. That needs to kind of go out the window tonight because there's not a ton that you can do from a concept standpoint, but there's a whole bunch you can do to run into a lot of psychological things, right? You have to overcome so many psychological hurdles if you start doing crazy math content review tonight and then, and jump into the test tomorrow. So we're really just talking about strategies and how we can get best prepared for the exam tomorrow. Colby, welcome, guys. As you guys jump in here, welcome. Okay, how do we put ourselves in the best mindset for tomorrow so that we're ready to go? That doesn't mean that you can't review anything or review your notes at all, but what it does mean is that you don't want to be focused on the single, don't worry, if you don't know what a matrix is, right, or matrices in math right now, don't focus on matrices tonight. That's one question on the math test. That's going to do so much harm than good, rather than just focusing on the 40 questions that you do know how to do. Johnny, welcome. Okay, guys, so I continue to preach this, I continue to talk about this and how important this is. But this is a mindset test. It's a focus test. And we get the question all the time. I said this, Sam, Johnny, welcome, Colby. Guys, I talk about this a lot, but one of the questions we frequently get asked and one of the reasons that this test still exists is why does Harvard or why does Stanford, why do these colleges still consider this to be so important? The reason for that has nothing to do with the content. Okay, and that should tell us everything we need to know about how important this test is psychologically. I don't think Harvard really cares if you know how to do punctuation rules, right? That's a 6th grade grammar concept. I don't think Harvard's really concerned with that. Is it an important thing to know so that you are a better writer? Absolutely. And again, the content, what should be important, what isn't important, all that can be argued, right, forever. So if we know that can always be argued, then what is Harvard or Stanford, any of these unbelievable universities, what do they really care about? What they care about is the focus, right? The ability to stay involved for 3.5 hours. Because guess what? If you go to Harvard, you're going to be competing against the top 1% of all students in the world. And on top of that, Harvard has these math finals that are 3 hours long. They take place on Saturdays sometimes. And lo and behold, that sounds a lot like the ACT exam. Is the content way different and potentially way harder? Absolutely. But is the environment the same? 100%. Right? If you're somebody that's trying to get a 36 on the ACT test, that's going to be a similar feeling to how it feels to try to compete at Harvard. And that's why Harvard needs to know that's who they're going after, because the last thing that they want to do, and this goes for every university, I only use Harvard as the example because everybody knows it and everybody knows how great of a school it is. But I use Harvard as the example because the last thing that they want to do, way worse than denying your admission to Harvard, is having to kick you out because you can't handle the rigor and the grades and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what we have to be focused on. We have to be focused on that this is a psychological focus test 90% of the time, and 10% of the time it's worrying about concepts. Right? That's why the reading level on this exam is written at an 8th to 9th grade reading level for all of the passages. If Harvard wanted to test how good of a reader you are, couldn't they just give you the AP English test? Probably. or AP right English Lit test? Absolutely. They don't. Right? There's a reason that they do not do that. And that's why these tests are still so important to these colleges. That's why despite all of the backlash these have gotten, ACT, SAT over the last 5 years, more states, not private universities, more state universities and more states are implementing stronger scholarship money, all that kind of stuff, if you do well on these exams. Right? So despite all of the headlines about how poor these exams are and poor representation, somewhere behind the scenes, a lot of these big decisions are being made that these tests really do matter. Okay, so you got to keep thinking about that. You got to keep pushing. And again, you can memorize this content if you keep a positive mindset, as we talked about last night. These concepts are not very hard. They're just not. Okay, but if you go into the test with a very negative attitude, or if you go into preparation, right, where you're trying to get better each day, if you go into that with a negative mindset, then it is hard. You're battling yourself and you're battling the test, and that's difficult to do. Neil, welcome back, guys. Right, that's something we talked about, right, last night, is having this positive encouragement and positive mindset. Otherwise, you're defeated before you even start practicing, and more importantly for tomorrow, before you even start the test. Somebody posted something on one of our videos that said, what happens if I'm not very good at the reading section? Well, there's not a ton you can do between today and tomorrow. And the same person posted that they were also good at the English and math section. So if you know that not a lot can be done with your reading section between today and tomorrow, why in the world are we focused on that? Right? We're still going to give it our all tomorrow, but maybe that's not where we ultimately want to be. English and math sounds pretty good. If I'm pretty good at those two, and those two happen to be the first two tests out of the gate, that feels pretty great to know that I'm going to start off with two good sections for me, and then I can keep that positive momentum going into the reading test, even if I don't feel as comfortable about that one. So again, don't focus on your worst section tonight. Don't think about your worst section. Maybe if English is your best section and you get a 33 on that test, maybe you try to figure out how I can get to a 35, because believe me, going from a 33 to a 35 from now until tomorrow morning on a test, on any section of the test, is a lot easier than trying to go from a 21 to a 23, realistically. Because a 33 means that you're already exceptionally good at that section and you're looking at 2-3 questions more in order to get to a 35. 21 to 23 means that you have 8 questions. That's how the scale works. And so again, focus on your best section, not your worst section, particularly if you have one if you have an exceptional section and one where you're trying to get to a higher score, you're going to improve over a longer period of time. Don't focus on the one that isn't as good right now. Okay? So again, guys, Neil just said it. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing. It doesn't mean you have to push every minute of every day. If you're starting to get fatigued and you're starting to get kind of down about this test, take a week break. Take a month break. Whatever it takes to get you to be like, oh, you know what? I want to get back into this. I got this. I can get back into this. And that's not going to be a killer. Every junior right now, if you include tomorrow, has 8 exams, 8 ACT exams that are scheduled that they can take between now and the time you have to apply to college as a senior. 8 of those. That's a ton of time, right? So don't let tomorrow get you all down and bothered and all that kind of stuff. Instead, come back with a positive attitude and see if, hey, I'm going to push through this exam. And maybe it's not exactly where I want to be, but I know that it's better than I would have done if I didn't have a positive attitude and just decided to give up on the science section or whatever. Is that all cool, guys? Can everybody give me 2 thumbs up if that stuff makes sense? 2 thumbs up, guys, if that stuff makes sense. Okay. Just some announcements. Yeah, so Gabriella, if that's the case, if you're feeling fatigued, try to get some good sleep tonight. Okay, do everything you can to put yourself in the right position for tomorrow, and then ultimately give it your best. The best part about this, Gabriella, again, going back to this mindset thing, is guess what? If you don't do as well tomorrow because you are feeling fatigued, because like maybe over the last 2 weeks you've dealt with schoolwork, you've gone to virtual learning, it's been a lot, right? Maybe if that's the case, that's just a great learning experience going into the February test if you take it then, or if you take the April test, rather than, learn from this process, because again, you have so much time. It's much better to learn from that if whatever the process has gotten you to this point, maybe it's factors out of your control, like schoolwork, right? You got to do the right stuff to get your schoolwork done. So that's just a fatigue thing that always kind of comes around in December. And so maybe that's it, right? Think about what it is that's gotten you to this point where you feel fatigued, and then try to make that correction for February. The good news is if it is schoolwork, something that you can't control in December, then you're going to have a lot less of that in all likelihood leading into the February test or the April test, because you want to have finals, you want to have the end of the semester, all that kind of stuff, and that'll give you every opportunity to do well and not feel that way. So even tomorrow, if you are feeling fatigued, maximize your potential even when you're fatigued. Okay, Gabriella, then if it's your last chance to take the test, if you're a senior, then you got to you got to put it in your mind that you are fatigued and you can sleep for the next week. Okay, you can, Alicia, same thing, right? You guys can sleep for the next week if you need to, or if you can't sleep for the next week because you have schoolwork, the week after that, everybody's on break, so you can sleep for that week. Okay, you guys are young, you're resilient, you'll push through this. Believe me, if you're tired right now, you will be able to push through it. And that's the beauty of being young and taking these tests and being energetic. You got to move forward one step ahead, right? Don't think about the 60-question math test. Don't think about your worst section. Think about how many questions do I need to get right to get this score on the math test, and let me go out and find those 40 questions or whatever it is. And we'll talk more about that today. Okay? Guys, just a couple of housekeeping things, just some mentions here before we get started. Tonight, 30 minutes after this live stream ends, we're going to have I decided, because we didn't get enough time at the comprehensive review last night to really talk a lot about the ACT science section. So tonight we're going to do a 30-minute live stream that just goes through how to find the easiest questions on the ACT science section. Okay, so I just posted that video. That's there now. On top of that, another one of these, another thing that I want you guys to have and to copy and to make sure that you watch before tomorrow is the 5 essential items that you'll need before the ACT test. Okay, the things that you should have ready, I should say, the 5 essential items to have ready the night before the ACT exam. 5 essential items ready. Okay, so get these things ready to go. This is a great segue. Okay, guys, this is a great segue into the thing that we talk about the most in this. And this positive mindset, this positive energy, one of the things we always want you guys to remember is to control, right? We say this, control what you can control. Control what you can control. Guys, if you're not feeling great about the reading section, that's nothing, there isn't a ton that can change between tonight and tomorrow. Unless you change your mindset, right? Maybe reading is your worst section, or maybe science is your worst section, but you're exceptionally good at the math section. So don't think about science, right? You're going to give it your all. You want to try to improve 2 points on science, okay? Because if you improve 1 point on every section of the test, just 1 point, and a lot of times that's just even one question on every section, just one question, your whole score will go up by a full point, okay? And I'll show you guys that in a second. But if that's crazy to me. That one question on each section could result, one question only, that's 4 total questions, can result in going from a 30 to a 31, or a 25 to a 26, or a 20 to a 21. Just one question on each section. Okay, but we're not going to get there if we have a negative mindset and we just start to give up as we go through this. Is that cool? Okay, so again, guys, please try to make sure that you guys check out those 2 videos. If you can't make the live stream for the science test, that's fine. But those 5 essential items, in terms of controlling what you can control, one of the things that we don't want to see from any students is for you guys to wake up tomorrow and be flustered. You don't have your ticket printed out, or you can't find your ID, or you don't have your snack, your water bottle, your calculator's not charged, right? If those things are, if that's something that you typically would do, I used to do that all the time, right? And not be ready to go. That's not going to lend itself well tomorrow morning. That does not mean you are not controlling what you can control. Right? You're letting something go by, and that's only adding to an anxiety that's already going to be there. No matter what, if you're the best test taker in the world, there's always still going to be some adrenaline that comes tomorrow that adds to some anxiety and stress. A certain level of that is good. It means that you're wanting to focus, that it means something to you. Too much of that means that you're going to get flustered. And this is something that makes you, right, if you're struggling or running around tomorrow, when you're supposed to be doing kind of these set things that we want you to do before the test, that's going to provide that negative energy, that where you get flustered, right? That stress, that anxiety that we don't want. So please make sure that you guys check those 5 essential items and you have those ready to go tonight. Is that cool? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense, guys? Thumbs up if that makes sense. You don't have to watch it right now. It's pretty short. It's an easy video to watch. But 5 essential items that are ready to go tonight. Okay? All right, guys. So one of the things that we talk a lot about, as soon as we start to see some of these thumbs up, great. Alicia, perfect. Okay, and Gabrielle and Alicia, this for the seniors, all of the seniors, this is going to be particularly important. We talked about it last night, but I just cannot stress how important this next piece is, this next piece of the puzzle. Okay, I'm going to open up a different, this is the, if you guys have the 2021 red book, right, the one with the practice test guide, that's the one, that's the test scale that I'm looking at right now. This is the A11 test. Okay, you guys will see it here. Okay, so this is the A11 ACT scale. This is the A11 ACT scale. If this thing worked, that would be great. There we go. Okay, so A11 ACT scale, like the 74F1 we looked at last night, is pretty good. It's pretty reflective of what most ACT scales are going to look like. They're going to change from one test to another. The English section, for example, on the A11 test is difficult, but all the other sections are pretty good representations of what you're going to see tomorrow in terms of a scale. Right, where you can miss one and still get a perfect score on the science section. You can miss one, still get a perfect score on the math. This is pretty reflective of most of the recent scales. Okay, so we're looking at the A11 ACT scale. And if you guys want to just plug this in, if you guys want to follow along here, okay, one of the things that I really want you guys to be focused on tonight and tomorrow is setting an expectation for yourself. So if anybody wants to, this will help you, I promise, if you want to be used as the example. Does anybody have a section on the test that you feel, and I'll just go with whoever answers this question first, that you feel particularly, you're a little nervous about tomorrow? Anybody have a section on the test that you're a little nervous about tomorrow? And in addition to that, if you are nervous, can you give me your goal score, your realistic goal score based on practice tests? Not one where you're going to, where it's super positive and you're going to get 4 points higher than you've ever gotten, or super negative and you're going to get 4 points lower for some odd reason. Just kind of right in the middle of what you would expect yourself to get. Okay, so reading, looks like we got a lot of reading and some science here. Okay, reading, looks like, okay, so reading 26, right? If you're looking for a 26 on the reading test, okay, if that's your expectation, then tomorrow we're not going in with the expectation that we're getting a 26. No, right? That's all right? That's mythical. You've never, and again, guys, I'm just going off of the first ones I saw here. Reading 26, right? But this still applies to everybody. If you're trying to get a 26 on the reading test, most importantly, if you're great, right? Whoever said that, if you're great at reading, if you're not great at reading and you're great at another subject, right? What's your best subject? Who has that? Okay, who has that? Who has a test form or a test subject, right? Where you are. Yeah, guys, absolutely. We're gonna make more of those real-time videos too. I'm super glad. Anytime you guys comment like that, it really makes me happy that we're, that these videos are making a difference. So if you guys watch those real-time videos, we posted those below in the chat as well. Okay, so guys, if you're watching, if you have the math video, right, and you're watching math, and your expectation for math is to get a 54, or rather a 33, right? That equates to a 54 on the math test. Most importantly, a 33 on the math test is in the top 1.5% of all students that take the math test. If you are that good at math, focus on that, right? It's like, it would be like you not wanting to focus on something that's not your best, in order to worry about something that is your best, right? Whatever I'm trying to say there. But so it doesn't mean that you immediately ignore the reading section. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean, right? Or if English is your best, right? It doesn't mean you ignore your worst section. It just means that tonight, right? You have two goals in mind. If you're hoping to get a 26 on the reading section, Your goal is not a 26 on the reading section. It is a 29 out of 40 on the reading test, right? You're trying to answer 29 questions, however that may be. Okay, you're not worried about timing. You're finding 29 reading questions, whether that be answering 3 passages instead of 4, if that helps you with your accuracy, right? That's what you're focused on, 29 out of 40 questions, because that's so much more tangible than just some arbitrary score on a scale that you will never be graded on again. Think about it in your lives. Is there another scale that's graded on a 36? You don't get graded at a 36 on a school test. So if this is arbitrary, right? This means nothing relative to anything we've ever done in the past, nor anything we'll ever do in the future. But this 29 out of 40 is very, very tangible to everything we've ever done. Okay, so now I'm thinking, okay, 29, 26 on the reading test. That's not my best section, but I want to do well. I want you to realize that if you get a 33, right? If you get 54 questions right, which is actually more like a 34 with the guessing technique, if you guys have seen that. But let's just say you have a 33 on this section and you go in positively, right? You go with 33 on your best section and you're looking for a 26 on what you would consider your worst section. I want you to realize that balances out to a 30, which is in the top 5 or 6% of all students that take this exam. If you can balance to the top 5 or 6%, then why in the world would we worry about this section? And guess what? Most of the time, when we have students that don't worry about this reading, right, rather that don't worry about their worst section, guess what? Their worst section tends to go up because they're not worried about it. They let the test come to them. They focus on the fact that the math test comes before the reading test, which gives you another advantage. If you're the best at English, Gabriella, right, that means that you start with your best section. That's the ultimate confidence booster. That tomorrow you go into the test, and it doesn't mean that if you don't get, you're expecting a 34 and all of a sudden you get a 32 on English because it's a really hard English test tomorrow, something throws you off. A 32 is in the top 5% of all students that take the English test. Right? Don't be discouraged if it's not the top level you've ever practice tested at because of some obscure circumstance. Instead, be like, okay, I'm pretty close. To get a 29 overall on the math section or on the math section or on the test as it is, the whole test. Because on math, right, if you're looking at this test, you can skip 15 questions, get 45 out of 60, and you'll guess on the remaining 15, you're guaranteed, not even with the good guessing technique that we have, you're just statistically speaking, if you leave 15 questions blank and you guess, you're going to get 3 of those right, statistically speaking. I still want you to use the guessing letter because you'll get even more right. That guessing technique we talked about last night or on the comprehensive review. But if you skip 15 questions on math, you're guaranteed a 29 if you get those 45 right. And we always get students asking, well, like, what happens if I don't get those 45 right? Well, it's like, what happens, right? What happens if I get hit by a bus today? That could happen too. But the idea is that we're not thinking that way. We're thinking, I'm going to take the 15 questions that I really don't know how to do anyway, that I'm probably not going to learn tonight or while I'm taking the test, certainly tomorrow. The 20 to 25 minutes that I would have spent looking at those 15 questions, I'm going to apply to the 45 questions I do know how to do to guarantee that those 45 questions are right. Right? And that's what, it's so tangible, right? That is so tangible. It's so easy to think, well, okay, tomorrow on the math test, there's 60 questions that I can skip 40. I can get 75% of those right, and I can still get a 29 on math. On reading, it's the same thing. If you were to get the first 3 passages done on reading, right? If you get 30 out of 40 questions because you're accurate, and everybody, again, is always like, well, what happens if I miss some of those in the 30s? Right? Or the 30 that I do answer, what happens if I miss some of those? Well, the idea is that you're taking more time and not rushing to try to get through all 4 passages so that you don't make those simple mistakes. Again, it could happen, right? There's always a chance you miss those. Where the whole point of this is that you don't do that you don't make those simple mistakes because you have more time. But if you get 30 questions right on the reading test, not even worrying about the last passage or your worst passage in any way, right? You jump from a 30 and then you use the guessing letter, statistically guaranteeing that you get at least 3 of those questions right. If you answer 75% of the questions on the reading test, you get a 30 on the reading test. If you answer 75% of the questions on the math test, you are statistically guaranteed to get a 29 and more likely a 30, but let's call it a 29 for guarantee's sake. Gabriella, I would. So it's a great question from Gabriella there. I wouldn't. It's difficult to go back, right? For a couple reasons. One, I know you guys are 16, 17, 18 years old. The chances that at the right now we can sugarcoat it as much as we want and say like, oh yeah, go back and make sure you check each answer. But you guys are 16, 17, 18 years old. There's no way you really go back. You're like, yeah, that's right because you put it there right the first time. So it's hard to do that. Instead, in an ideal world, we want to set our goal number tonight, right? So let's say it's 45 on the math test, or let's say it's whatever, right? It's 45 on the math test. And we want to set the expectation that we're going to use 57 minutes because we want to save a little bit of time to guess at the end. We're going to take 57 minutes and pace ourselves to get 57 minutes and 45 questions done. Because then we're spending the extra time, then we're doing the process to avoid simple mistakes. We're doing that during the test, and that's way more likely to actually help you than going through the test and then expecting yourself to come back. Because again, when you're tired and you just want to be done, it's very unlikely that you'll really go back and consider the remaining questions. Yeah, so NMA here, let me, we just posted it, without a doubt, we just posted this video for English section, for the English test. These are the grammar rules I would focus on. And English, you kind of luck out in that sense because English is one that, you're probably not going to feel overwhelmed between now and tomorrow morning. English is just, if you take some time to memorize these grammar rules. So let me just, these are the three, guys, if you want to check this out tonight. These are the three most important grammar rules that are covered, including kind of in-depth explanations, and we go through them on a real test. So, most important grammar. So I'll check this video out. Guys, there are 10 punctuation questions on every ACT English test. If you miss, or if you're missing punctuation questions, a really easy way to correct that, if you're missing those, is to go back and just memorize those punctuation rules. Guys, I would wait. So in terms of studying tonight, I wouldn't study too much. I would review your strategies. Because the strategies, right, setting this goal number and then sticking to it tomorrow, not rushing through it, not having the adrenaline kick in, setting your goal score number of 45 out of 60, to guarantee that you get a 29, I would set those in stone and I would review these strategies that we've tried to give you guys. That's what I would review because there's not a ton, other than on the English test, because those concepts generally are a little bit more straightforward. Other than on the English test, there's not a ton you can do between now and tomorrow morning, but there is a lot you can do in terms of reviewing your strategy and being solid with that so that each time you start the test, you know exactly what you're doing. That's controlling what you can control. You know exactly, okay, math, 3-pass method, I know what I'm doing. I'm finding the 45 questions that I know how to do, and I'm not rushing through those. I know that I can have 3 minutes at the end, but I'm going to find those 45 questions, and I'm not going to miss one because of a simple mistake. Yeah, guys, for 29 overall, it obviously depends, but you can. The nice thing about the ACT is it's very easy, right? It's very easy to figure out your score. It's just an average, right? So English, in terms of scoring on this test, which is another good question because understanding how this test is scored takes away so much stress. It's amazing to me that as I worked for these other companies and when we started this, that the scoring wasn't the first thing that we discussed. It never is. It's like nobody's realized that. But part of the reason that we have so much anxiety is because we don't know what a 30 means. That's why we spend so much time in these live streams and on these videos talking about the scale. Because if I put it in context of 45 out of 60, that's suddenly, 45 out of 60 gets you a 29 on the math test if you can be accurate. That's suddenly in the context of it puts, right? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that's a lot more tangible rather than just thinking randomly about how I'm going to get a certain score? It's a lot more tangible to think like, oh, this is how many questions I have to get right to get that score. And then it's just like anything we've ever done. To get a 29 composite, technically you only need a 28.5, right? 28.5. And so it's really easy math. That's one of the things that makes the ACT nice. If you have to get an average of 28.5 on each section of the test, right? And we talk about averages. This is actually like almost directly off of an ACT question. You could do an ACT, right? If we add all those up, that's what? 58, 57, right? So 104. So you have to find 104 points. If you want a 29 on the ACT, You have to find 104 total points between the 4 sections. And again, we don't want to think about that in terms of points for the ACT points. We want to think about that in terms of how do I find the number of questions that I need to get on each section to add up my score to 104. Because a 28.5 on the ACT is equivalent, they'll round that up for you, and it's equivalent to a 29. Okay, does that make sense? Andrea, welcome. Alicia, great, guys. I'm glad that these things are making sense. Guys, I understand, too, that you're not going to get a 28.5 on any individual section, right? But a 28 and a 29 on 2 sections, like English and math, right? That would give you an average of 28.5. So, I realize that you're not going to get a 28.5 on any individual section, but that's how we have to think about it. All of this is mathematically based. It's just amazing to me that when we started doing these live streams, I looked and looked and looked, and even with these different companies that I worked for, looked for materials that described this in a way that's way more tangible to students, and it doesn't exist. But if you think about it in this terms, mathematically speaking, this is right. This isn't me making stuff up. It's not me, criticizing a strategy or saying this strategy is better. It's just saying you'll never get there. It's positivity all the way through. That if you want to get a 29, you got to work hard to find a way to find 104 points through the 4 sections of the test. No, so you have to get 28.5 on all 4. I was just using this as a representation, right? An average of 28.5. So you'd have to do the same thing, right, on the reading and science. I was just using that as a representation to show you how you get to 28.5, because you won't get a 28.5 on any individual section. It will be a whole number. Yeah, so NMA, the one thing that you can do is to take a deep breath and sacrifice questions. Okay, here's how you go into the reading and science and get a 36. Okay, it's very, very easy and very straightforward. That going into the test, you know that you're going to skip 1 question. Okay, or 2 questions, ideally 2 questions. That going into the test, if you're already at a 33 or 34, and that's the only time, if you've already proven that you get a 33, 34 consistently on practice tests, that's the only time that you should be considering how to get a 35 or 36. I love the idea that you're still trying to improve at that level, but if you're not there, don't think that a 5 or 6 point jump is going to happen between now and tomorrow morning. It's just going to put way too much added stress on you by tomorrow morning. But can a 3-point or 2 or 3 point improvement on any section, or even on all of the sections happen? Absolutely. And if you get a 3-point improvement on all 4 sections, that's a 3-point improvement overall on the exam in one night. That can happen. And so the first thing that I would do, if you're already at a 33 or 34, I would love if you guys could go into the test tomorrow for those students that are there and try to get, and realize that this is not a 40-question test for you on either section. It's a 38-question test. And if you really want my opinion, it's really not even that. The way that I go into every reading and science test, and for those that have seen those reading and science real-time videos, I think I feel pretty capable. On the reading section, feel very capable of getting a 36 every time if I put my head down and really think about it. On science, it's more volatile, but let's say 34 guaranteed on science. I go into every single science and reading test with the expectation that even though I think I'm a great reader and I think I can get a 36, that I'm shooting for 37. If I can get 37 out of 40 questions accurately answered, then I know I'm statistically guaranteed a 35, a 34, let's say, but really a 35 on any recent scale on every test. And that I promise you guys that if you take the pressure away, even at the highest levels of testing on any section, if you take the stress away of thinking I got to get to 40 questions, and instead you think to yourself, I got to get to 37 questions, it will make a huge difference. In fact, there will be a potential, as you guys have seen from the reading videos and science videos we've done, that even though I go in with that mindset every time, there's very much a potential that I get 40 right and get all 40 done. But I'm not going in with that expectation because it puts too much stress on every question then. And again, that's the only conversation for students that are again, currently testing in that 33, 34 range. So set the expectation tomorrow, guys. Okay, set the expectation tomorrow that you guys go in and you want to find the number of questions that you know how to answer and that you stick to that number. NMA, does that make sense? And Elite Gamer, that's kind of along the same lines, right? In terms of saving time on the science and reading sections, you realize that if you sacrifice 3 questions I'm not asking you to just leave those blank. That would be, right? I'm asking you to use our guessing strategy, and you're guaranteed statistically if you use that strategy and if you've been accurate on those other questions, you'll get at least one more question right, which would be a 35 on both reading and science on most tests. It's amazing how much stress that takes away. Even 3 questions. That basically gives you 2.5, 3 extra minutes on reading and science on questions that otherwise would have given you a lot of trouble. Because there are a few hard questions, not as much on reading, but on science, there are 3 really difficult questions on most tests. So why are we focused on those 3 when 37 of them we know we can get right, and then we get we get a 35 instead of a 36? If you can, it's amazing how much that mindset will change, and that's true for everybody at every level. Let's see, a couple questions up here. Yeah, Johnny, did you see that link? Did I post that? Johnny, did you see that link I posted earlier? I'm just looking at some of the past questions. Did you see that link? It says most important grammar rules. Did everybody get that? That's a really important one. And it just kind of is a walkthrough. Did that come through? Well, maybe it didn't. Here, guys, let me repost that. I don't think it came through. Johnny, thanks for pointing that out. It came through on mine, but let's see if that works. Did that come through? Yeah. Guys, I'm also going to post this. So, guys, I'll post this in the comments section below. Just in case you guys looked at it. All right, guys. So again, that hopefully gives you a whole bunch of perspective on what this test really means, and that you guys can go through this and don't have to be super overwhelmed tomorrow. Okay, elite gamer. I'm glad that you felt that realization helps you, because if you're already at that high level, there's no question that if you go into the test tomorrow thinking, yeah, I can skip the 3 hardest problems, you didn't even have that mindset before, and you were still able to get to a 33, 34. Right? If you go in with that mindset, it's going to be a guaranteed 33 or 34 because you're just skipping. You're like, oh, I don't care about these 3 hard problems. Right? Who cares about those? I know I can get the other 37 right, and then I guess on the last one. And yeah, I mean, again, if you're trying to get to a 36, I guess that's, you have to get a little lucky, but a 35 is in the top 0.5% of all students that take the test. Guys, the link, I don't know why it's not posting in the chat, but I posted it in the comments section below. So if you refresh your page, that ACT English link, you can see it in the bottom, in the comments below the video. Does this all make sense, guys? Before I get into what I want you to do in terms of preparation tonight and tomorrow, right? Which is just like a shorter, just what we need to do to get ready. Hanish, in terms of the reading section, I don't know if it'll work for tomorrow, but if you have time, if you're only a junior, I definitely work on reordering the passages. If the 3 to 4 questions that you typically miss are on the same passage every time, like passage number 2, that passage type remains the same on every single ACT test for the reading section. So if you notice that there's a consistent passage that you do worse on, do that one last, right? Get the other so that you're not hindering any of your other passages which you already feel strongly about. Okay, so do that one last. Yeah, guys, let me see here real quick. No idea what's going on. You guys can't see the link. Okay, then guys, just do this. Johnny, can you get everybody that's looking for that grammar? I don't know why it's not posting. Sometimes YouTube chat stream gets weird. If you guys go onto the channel, just go onto the normal channel, just open up another tab. If you just open up that tab and type in Star Tutors and then 3 ACT grammar rules, just that, Star Tutors 3 ACT grammar rules, it will show up. It will be the first one, and it'll say the 3 most important ACT grammar rules. Johnny, can you just confirm that if you do that, that you see those grammar rules pop up? Yeah, that's what I did before, Johnny. I was copying and pasting it in the chat before, and I can see it on mine, but for whatever reason, it's not coming through for you guys. I don't know why, but I'm seeing it. Like it literally shows up as a link right now for me on my. Maybe it's because I'm the admin account. But yeah, I don't know. If you can type that in, just confirm, that'd be great. Anybody else who's looking for those grammar rules? If you guys can confirm, that'd be great as well. Thanks, Johnny. That's great. Some questions in the science sections. Which topics do these cover? Yeah, so we'll save science in terms of concept review for the science section. We'll save those for that. We have another live stream in 45 minutes, covering just 30 minutes talking about the ACT science test. Let's save any questions you guys have about ACT science. Let's save for that one, for that next live stream. Again, that's going to be at in 45 minutes at the bottom of the hour, 30 minutes at the 30. Let's see. Great, Alicia, that's awesome. Perfect. I'm glad you guys are seeing this. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. I'm not sure why it's not posting. Hey, Johnny, can you do me a favor? Can you see if you can post it? Can you see if you type in ACT link, can you just see if you can post it in the chat for everybody? Or Alicia, same thing. If one of you guys could post that link for the live stream or for the grammar rules, that'd be awesome. Maybe it'll come through for the rest of us. I'm not sure why mine's not working. ACT, so the super scoring, guys, on the question about super scoring, that's all based on the college itself, the specific college. So you have to check, just type in ACT super score in the college that you're looking at, and that's how you'll know if it super scores, that you can take one section at a time. If not, none of the Ivy Leagues do. I think Yale says that they do, but they don't really. But if you're looking at any of the top really 25 schools, you probably won't be able to super score, even if the college says that you can. The only time it works in that situation usually is if you're applying as like an engineering major, then super scoring matters to them, because really they only really care about your math score on that, on math and science if you're an engineering major. And then some of those colleges, like the top 25 colleges, will consider the super score more closely because they're really only concerned about half of the test, realistically. Yeah, I don't know, Jen. I don't know what's going on. They're like blocking that link for some reason. Yeah, Star Tutors 3 grammar rules on YouTube. That should get it for you guys. Yeah, guys, SAT super scoring is a lot more favorable. Okay, guys, so let's keep going, because I want to talk last thing tonight with regards to this hype stuff and getting you guys ready to go for tomorrow. Again, we posted the 5 essential items. Okay, the 5 essential items. You know, maybe this is why. Let me see if this works, guys. Because I wanted to post it. Did you guys see the 5 essential items video too, or did we miss that? Here, I know what I can do, maybe. Let's see, guys. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure you guys get this. If you guys see that essential items video too. Okay, anybody have any questions? So what we're jumping into now, guys, for the last 15 minutes or so, is to talk about the preparation, what you need to have the night, what you should, all that kind of stuff, all the important stuff regarding having stuff ready to go tonight. There you go, Braden. I love it. I love that mentality of I'm going to do it rather than what happens if this bad thing happens is 95% of the test. You guys are all going to do great. That's such an important component to this. That's why we try to stay so positive in these live streams. I try to be as positive as I can no matter which student it is or what, because I know for a fact that being negative is going to lower your score. So positivity might not raise it. You might still be stuck at the same score you've been at, but I know that it's not going to hurt that score, right? If you stay upbeat and stay positive and want to be there, want to be present, want to be continuing to work, it's going to make a huge difference. NMA, that's great, right? So let's see, can you guys see this? These are the 5 essential items. So tonight, right, let's talk about which I want you guys to have ready to go. 5 essential items to have. Did you guys see this video before? Ready? Can you guys see that video that I just posted? That link? YouTube chat, man. YouTube's like a $300 billion company on its own. And Google's over $1 trillion. They got to figure out the chat stuff. Okay, I don't know what's going on, guys. Sorry. So the 5 essential items, that's another one. I'll write it up on the screen here. So you guys, if you guys search 5 essential ACT items to have ready the night before the test, it's on our channel. 5 essential ACT, right? And it says the night before. If you search that, you'll see the link on the channel. I don't know what's going on. Okay, but these are all things that you want to have ready to go the night before. It is very, very important, as we continue to say, that you control what you can control. Control what you can control, right? If we don't do that, if that's not the policy, then we add anxiety and stress that we don't need to add. This is already going to be, you're already going to feel a little stressed tomorrow. There's nothing that I can say or do. But in a lot of ways, that's a good thing, because if we didn't care, you don't think about breathing because you're not stressed about breathing, right? You're not focused on your breathing most of the time, okay? But when you are a little stressed, it means you're focused. You want to do well on something. It's balancing that between getting overly stressed and overly anxious and letting it affect you negatively, and keeping it right in kind of that sweet spot where you are very focused because you want to do well. And that's what we're focused on. And again, by controlling what we can control, and having these things ready to go the night before, laid out, right? So you have your snack, you have your water bottle, you have your calculator that's charged, your ID, you have your ticket. If you have all these things ready to go, then you wake up tomorrow and you can take exactly the steps that I'm going to list out here to get ready for the exam. Okay, so can everybody give me 2 thumbs up in the chat if that makes sense? To control what you can control, right? Don't take these things for granted. And if you're already testing in the 30s, you really can't take these things for granted, because that's such a fine line. If you get a 34, if you're in the 34 to 36 range, you're already in the top 1% of all students that take this exam. Meaning that in order to go from a 34 to a 36, you're competing against the other top 1% of students. Okay, so you can't afford to give up easy points just because right, on the English test, you come in a little flustered because you got there late or because you didn't have something ready to go. You come into English, you miss 2 of the first 5, and then you get on the roll again, but you missed those 2 out of the first 5 because of things that you could have controlled. And that's super, super important. Okay? Super, super, super important. Okay? And so the next thing that I want you guys to think about, ideally, between now and tomorrow morning, I would recommend, okay, Johnny, you're 100% right, especially on reading and science. Because reading and science are so much about staying focused. There's not a ton of content work you could have done leading into it. So if you start to lose focus on the reading section and you start to check out, it's so easy to go downhill. And science is that times tenfold. So you got to be ready to go for the science test. You got to stay upbeat. You got to stay positive. Okay, that's all so true. Yeah, right? So extra, right? That's exactly what happened. I can't stress this enough, that control what you can control. If you show up late or if you don't have something, that adds anxiety. You literally feel it in your chest. You're like, oh my God, right? I don't have this. Am I going to be able to take the test? Instead of thinking about what you're there for and to actually do well on the test, you're thinking about, where is my ticket, right? Or does my calculator have batteries? That's stuff you don't want to be thinking about. Instead, we want to follow a pretty focused regimen tonight and tomorrow morning. So here's what I want you guys to do. Here's what I would recommend doing. I would recommend, in terms of a warm-up for tomorrow, first and foremost, tonight, don't go to bed. Okay, don't go to bed suddenly way earlier than you typically do for school. If you go to bed at like 3 in the morning, then that's another issue. That's a separate issue. Okay, but if you go to bed at 3 in the morning, then obviously go to bed earlier. Go to bed at midnight at the latest. But if you typically go to bed at midnight, don't suddenly go to bed at 8, right? Go to bed at 11. Get a little bit more sleep, but it doesn't have to be a lot because your body is ready for this, right? You did the same thing for school today to get ready for school. So don't suddenly throw your body clock way off just because, your parent tells you to go to bed at 7:30. Okay? Don't do that. If you typically go to bed at 7:30, then go to bed at 7:30 and wake up really early. That's an advantage in some ways on a test like this. Okay? But in any case, guys, here's what I want you to think about. Okay, so we're going to bed at regular time. We're going to have all of our stuff ready to go tonight so we don't have to overthink it. And then ideally what I would do is tonight I would do 2 practice English passages. That's a total of 30 questions, just 2. I don't think English is too overwhelming. If you don't want to do an English passage tonight, that's fine too. But I would just do 2 practice English passages to get yourself in the right mindset for the first thing that you're going to see tomorrow. 2 practice English passages. That goes, by the way, guys, that goes in terms of coffee tomorrow morning too. If you typically drink coffee or an energy drink, then go ahead and do that, right? Just like school. If you don't do that, you're going to be just like so wired, right? You don't want to be sitting there being like, whoa, right? That is the exact opposite of what we want. Okay, so if you don't typically drink coffee, don't suddenly start drinking 3 cups of coffee out of nowhere and just be so wired for the test tomorrow, because that's not good focus. That's pushing it too far over. Okay, but if you do drink coffee, go ahead and drink the same, right? Just get ready for school. It's like that's exactly why the test starts at 8 a.m. because they want to simulate it like school time. Okay, 2 practice English passages tonight. So night before is what I would recommend. Don't overthink them, right? Don't be too focused on these. This is just to get you into the mindset. Okay, and then the same thing, I would do I would wake up 15 minutes early tomorrow morning. Okay, and I'll even say this. For this one, these ones are optional. These ones tonight. These ones are 100% optional. Okay? Yeah, so animes, you're right. So yeah, in terms of the coffee, right? If it's a little bit of coffee, moderation is always going to be fine, right? I just mean don't like suddenly go amped up and try to get yourself 3 energy drinks, in. If you don't typically drink coffee before school or whatever, then maybe, half a cup or a cup is fine to get yourself awake. But that same thing can be done by just like, if you go run around your block or do some I'm not kidding, right? If you do some jumping jacks, that will get your body warmed up. It will, okay? So these 2 practice English passages tonight, let's call those optional. I think it would help to do those on a real test, right? Find a real test and do those. If you don't have a real test, you guys can, in the description of this video, you guys can see, I would post it normally, but because the links aren't working right now, if you guys look in the description, not the comments, but the description of this video, you'll see the ACT released exams. Just do one out of there. Tomorrow morning, not really that optional, is to do 1 practice English passage before you leave for the test. Yeah, there you go, Gabriella. That's the best way to say it. What Gabriella just said, if you guys see that. Make sure to know how coffee affects you before you drink it on test day. That's exactly right. 1 practice English passage tomorrow morning. That's only 15 questions. Okay, 1 practice English passage. Okay, this is 15 total questions. And again, the reason that we're having you do this is before you leave for the exam. So you have the test. I want you to actually ideally print out a practice passage to do tomorrow morning. Print it out tonight so you know you have it. And I want you to sit there for 9 to 15 minutes looking at each of these questions. Not too hard, but try to take it as if you're taking the real passage on the real test. I can't tell you, the reason that we do this is because I've seen so many score reports from students where they'll get, students who are unbelievable English test takers will get 4 of the first 10 questions wrong kind of inexplicably when we grade their practice test, and then they'll get 55 questions right in a row. And that just tells me one thing, that A, the student is fully capable of getting all of those questions right, and B, those first 4 of the first 10 are largely just a result of not being, right, of starting the test and not being focused, and then by question number 10, you're into it. Let's have that happen. Let's be into it before we start question number 1 so that we know exactly what we're doing. Okay, so 1 practice English passage, 15 questions. And then when you get to the testing location, don't be doing practice problems in the car, ideally, because it could give you a headache. It might not, but it could give you a headache for you car sick. So don't do really anything in the car as you drive over. And then while you're standing in line to register, I think it's very important to continue with this trend. Okay, to continue with this trend. So for those, let me just run this real quick. For those that have been on these live streams before, one of the things I talk about a lot is the fact that all of this content, our ACT and SAT tutors write these huge books, right, with every single problem we've ever seen on the last 5 years of ACT and SAT exams. And we write this full content, okay? And so this whole book right here, right, and what I'm going to show you guys, and again, for those that have been on these live streams before, you know where I'm going with this, we have put this entire tutorial on your phones. So when you get there tomorrow, especially if you're there with a friend or something, don't stand in line psyching each other out, talking about how poorly you're going to do, or talking about something that's unrelated. Right? It doesn't mean that you have to only be thinking about ACT while you stand in line, but ideally you want to just kind of be relaxed. And if you guys know, we put all of this content for the ACT for free if you download Star U. This is all available for free on Star U. Okay? It's available in the App Store or Google Play. If you click on if you open it up, you click on ACT and SAT practice lessons. Say start practicing, right? You're on the ACT page right when you open it up. It's okay, I'll take one now. And just open up the ACT English test, and while you're standing in line, right? While you're sitting there getting ready to register at the actual school, right? You've done your practice passage. You've driven without doing any additional work, and then to get yourself back in the right mindset to kind of quickly snap back into gear and be ready to go right off the bat for the English test, you're just doing practice questions on your phone while you're standing in line until they make you put it away, or until you feel pretty comfortable that you're going to start off on the right front. And you just do, let's say, pronouns questions. Right? It doesn't have to be the hardest thing in the world. Maybe you start reading about punctuation or do some pronouns practice. And again, all of this is available for free on all of your phones. So in terms of doing the right things, getting ready to go, being in the right mindset, this can be a huge, huge benefit, especially if you're in that high scoring range as it is. Because one question can make a huge difference if you're in the 30 plus range already. Does that all make sense, guys? Can everybody give me a thumbs up in terms of that warm up and that thought, that mindset that I want you guys to have ready before you go into the test? 2 thumbs up in the chat. Okay, and again, if you guys finish, right, if you finish with the pronouns test or pronouns section, just go to punctuation, right? And this talks about all the rules that we talked about last night in the comprehensive review. Just do 5 punctuation questions, right? So that you're in the right thought process, you're in the right mindset before you go into the exam tomorrow. And don't make right? Then you won't make simple mistakes right off the bat solely because you're starting the test. You'd have already done 25, 30 questions before you start the exam. And that gets you into such a good rhythm and positive mindset when you do well on that first section, that English section. All right, guys? So anything else? Any other questions? We're running out of time here. I try to make all of your questions, if you have any final questions, try to make them more like broad, because I don't want you to be thinking too narrowly about any individual question right now, or have thoughts, right? The whole point of today is to find the number of questions you feel like you can answer right tomorrow. Think about it in that tangible way. How do I answer these, right? Okay, how do I answer these questions? Think about it in a tangible way. I need to get this many questions right. I want to be accurate on these questions. And I'm gonna sacrifice the other ones that I was already gonna struggle with, that weren't a guarantee anyway. So I'm just basically spending the time on what ends up being an educated guess. That's not a good feeling, especially if we do make simple mistakes. Braden, in terms of a science strategy, so I said this before, but we're having another live stream tonight in 30 minutes. We didn't get a chance on the comprehensive review last night to talk about science for too long because I had to run. In 30 minutes from now, we're doing another quick 30-minute live stream on the ACT science section. So any questions on science will be answered during that live stream. Curve predictions for tomorrow, guys. Again, I would say, I don't know. It's not something that I can control, right? I know that's always a question we get asked on these live streams the day before the test, but I have no idea. What I do want you to remember is that if you've watched these videos as much as you have, okay, if you've watched all of our live streams, if you've watched all of our real-time videos, the best thing in the world for you guys tomorrow, if you're using our strategies, is to have the hardest possible test. It's to have the hardest possible test, because guess what? A hard test, let me just leave you guys with this, because this is really important and I think will give you guys a lot of confidence. Okay? A hard test, let's talk about the math section as an example. Okay? If you guys have a really hard math section, even if it's harder than October, if you have a hard test, if you guys can believe it, hard exams don't necessarily mean that there are more hard questions, right? From a quantity standpoint. Generally, not always, but generally, okay, if you see a really hard math or science test, it means that the hardest questions are super hard. And this is, if you guys want to check it out, this is a good example with the BO4 science, math and science test. The BO4 exam overall, okay, this is the April 2019 test officially released, and we have videos on both of these sections, real-time videos where I sit there and take the full test. This is the hardest possible test that they've ever administered overall, but on these two sections for sure, and science more than anything. However, if you use our methods, generally it's about the quality of the questions at the highest levels. So that means that there are still on the BO4 test 30, easy to medium questions, just like there are on every other test, except for the last 10 questions, the really hard ones on BO4, are exceptionally harder than any other test. And so the reason I bring all this stuff up is because if you guys get a really hard test tomorrow, but especially on math and science, but in your mind you're like, that doesn't matter. I'm still going to be focused on the number of questions that I can answer correctly. That my goal of 42 doesn't get altered, right? If I'm looking for 42 out of 60 questions on math, that doesn't get altered, or 30 out of 40 on the science. And then guess what? When you use the same techniques we've been talking about, if you get to that number, the scale is wildly in your favor. And so you want a hard test. And guess what? When everybody else, because we're only looking for the easy questions, when everybody else is struggling on the single hardest question, like the BO4 science test at the single hardest passage I've ever seen on an ACT science test, we're not passage number 1. If you just skipped that passage, the rest of the test was relatively easy. But the first passage was wildly difficult. If you just skip it, now all of a sudden you have the curve in your favor, and the same strategy still applies. You still look for all of the easiest questions. Same thing goes for math. So again, if you guys have a hard test tomorrow, it's important to remember that it's generally the hardest questions that dictate that hard test, not the quantity of difficult questions. Does that make sense? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Okay, so if math is difficult tomorrow, rather than thinking like, oh my God, math is so hard, I'm going to fail this, and then letting it affect your reading and science scores, if you guys have watched our 3-pass method, you should be going and being like, yeah, nice. Because I know the kid sitting next to me who's going to affect the scale just as much as I'm going to affect the scale is probably giving up right now because he doesn't know to skip the hard questions, or she doesn't know to skip the hard questions. She's toiling and thinking about one difficult question when I know that if I skip that one, I can get 15 right in a row and never have that same sense of frustration. And that's where the hard test really, really lends itself well to the strategies we talk about. Right, NMA, right? So that if the questions are harder, the curve will be in your favor, but generally it's not a quantity of difficult questions, it's a quality, that the hardest 10 questions are super hard, and that the 30 other questions are just like any other test on the science test. But if you stay on those 10 hard ones, it seems like the hardest test you've ever taken. But if you just skip them, the other 30 questions seem easy, and then you do the same technique we've talked about, and the scale then is in your favor, and you've still answered the same number of questions, and it's felt relatively similar to any other test. Does that all make sense, guys? You want a hard test, right? Because we're just trying to find the number of questions we can answer correctly. We're trying to keep ourselves in that mindset. How can I find the easy questions first, and then I'll worry about the hard ones? That's the best advice I can give. How do I find the easy questions first? All right, guys? It's not curve, guys, but the scale, right? So if you guys are at the scale. All right, guys, so hopefully all that makes sense. If you guys are looking for additional science talk and whatnot and talking about science strategy, we'll be back on in about 30 minutes to go through the science test for around 30 minutes. I hope this was really helpful. I hope you guys do know that, I know that you guys are going to do well tomorrow. I hope that you guys know that. Okay, because if you keep this positive energy, even if you don't get a 10-point increase, the positive energy alone will allow for a 2 to 3 point increase. I can guarantee it. Just because you don't give up, just because you put your head down, and as Johnny said earlier, keeping that positive momentum into the reading and science is so important, and that will raise your score guaranteed, regardless of content review tonight or regardless of difficulty tomorrow on the test. Okay, so guys, keep it up. You guys are doing great. I appreciate everybody continuing to work as hard as you guys are. I appreciate the support. If anything, guys, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. I can't tell you how much the support and the nice comments mean to me and to the rest of our teachers and tutors. It really does keep us wanting to do more of these. And the larger we can grow this community, the more, the better opportunity we have to produce. I probably have another 100 hours of content that I could talk about. But unfortunately, we don't have the time right now. But if we keep growing this community and you guys keep spreading the word and helping us, we have other things that we can talk about. And that goes beyond just SAT and ACT, AP stuff. We can do a lot of stuff. Okay, guys, so you guys are going to crush it tomorrow. You're going to do great. Hopefully we see you for the science section in 30 minutes or so. Otherwise, good luck, guys, and we'll see you next time. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend.